Hey, hey, hey! I bet you thought I forgot all about you, but I didn't. Hello there, good evening. This is Dr. Lisa. It is time for a happy hour with Dr. Lisa. I am your host. I am here. I know I'm very late, and I apologize. I have some good news. I am the proud mama of an almost college graduate. Woohoo! And so I am just thrilled about it. So thrilled. That's my baby. Shout out to my daughter. She is graduating from college this week. And so we are getting prepared for it by packing and all that stuff. And so I don't want you guys to think I forgot about this podcast today, but those kind of things, had to be done before I chimed on. So we are going to talk about Blog 45 today, taken from my website. My website is Lisa, Lisa, Liggins, Liggins, Chambers, CHAMBERS.com. So LisaLigginsChambers.com. That is where I write all kinds of blogs about my experiences in psychology over the course of about 20 plus years. I'm an old lady today. And I guess every day with a career spanning 20 something years at this point. Well, I might be an old lady, but I don't feel like it. And I don't look like it, hopefully. So if you want to chime in and you have questions that you want to ask me, please make sure you do that. You can chime in right on Podbean with me, or you can give me a call at 765-205-1959, or you can send me an email at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. I'm all over social media too. So if you really want to find me or talk to me or ask me questions, you can do that. And I try to answer every single person that sends me some information and gives me feedback. And I appreciate you listening and also giving me your thoughts. So I have had an interesting day today. I talked to someone who can see ghosts, more than two people today, which was interesting. And so, of course, I'm going to write all those things down and then we can talk about it at some point this year. Lots of information about that. And one of the things that I'm going to do today is answer a lot of public questions that I'm getting. Some of them are new questions, some of them are some of the same questions, but I also know that there have been quite a few questions about psychology in general. So I think I'm going to move away from the blog just a tiny bit and talk about, my experiences in psychology as far as being a student and stuff like that. Since some of you are asking about it, I know some of you want to be psychologists. And so, of course, I'm going to answer your question. All right, so what does it take to become a psychologist? A whole lot of time and work. and that's the bottom line. If you want to be a psychologist one day, whether it's at the master's level, which, I would suggest you try to get a doctorate degree, but if you don't want one, at the master's level, you can become a school psychologist or you can have a master's in clinical psych. It just depends on what you want to do with your career. So that's the first piece of advice that I would give to you. You guys, if you want to be a psychologist, you do have to read about what it takes to become a psychologist, because it is a very broad category when you think about psychology. So, for example, not all psychologists are clinical psychologists. You have school psychologists, which are typically at the master's level. You do get some who have PhDs in school psychology. Then you have neuropsychologists. Then you have forensic psychologists. Forensics and neuropsychologists are typically, clinical psychologists or licensed clinical psychologists who specialize in forensics or, neuropsychology. And then you have some branches of psychology where they don't have to have a license, such as, an educational psychologist, and let's say actually, have the credentials to get a state board license. And then you have social psychologists, you have experimental psychologists who are researchers, and so that's what I mean when I say psychology is such a broad category. So you actually have to research to figure out which part of psychology you really want to focus in on. So, I used to really want to go into neuropsychology. So I started doing some prep work in that uh, while I was getting my doctorate, and I did a residency or a practicum, which is kind of like an internship, but it's when you're in school getting your doctorate in neuropsychology. So I didn't continue with that because I felt like I gained what I needed, which was to learn how to test kids with ADHD more with uh, tests that neuropsychologists use. So once I gained that, I didn't feel the need to actually become a neuropsych. So I went more, there are new neuropsychologists who focus on kids, but I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to focus on clinical psych in schools. And so that's the route that I took, school children going into the schools. So it just depends. So my educational background, most of you already know, I did a little bit differently because I have a love for school psychology, and I also have a love for clinical psychology. So I went to school originally for school psychology, and then went back a couple years later and started working on my PhD in clinical psych. So I combine the two when I can to work with children. And I wanted to find or understand more clinical syndromes in children because at that time we were starting to see a rise in ADHD and mood disorders and other behavioral concerns other than ADHD. And so I felt like I didn't have enough education to deal with those children like I wanted to. So that's what I mean by you have to figure out which direction you want to go and then focus in on that. So I've always focused in two areas, school and clinical psych, but child related behaviors. I'm a behaviorist. And so you also have to find out which different discipline you want to be a part of. I am a behaviorist, tried and true. Everything I think that happens with children is surrounded by behaviors. Bandura is one of my favorite psychologists, other than my former advisor, Bob. So I am someone who believes that behaviors explain anything, whereas you have some psychologists who believe in they're Freudians and they believe Freud, his theories are, rule the world. So, you know, but we all work together. And then you have to decide if you want to stay at the master's level or if you want to get a PhD or if you want to go with the PsyD. So that depends. Some people have not heard of the PsyD. That is a doctorate in psychology. Now, if you want to work in the schools, more in the educational route, I always suggest getting an administrative endorsement. I tell everybody that who wants to even get a doctorate in education, getting a administrative endorsement. So as a superintendent, as a director of special education, or get an endorsement, as a principal or, something like that, so that you'll have that backup plan. Because I always believe in backup plans. And school psych was something that I loved, but it was always a backup plan for me if clinical didn't work out. A good backup plan because I actually really like school psychology. Let me think. So once you make the decision about which degree you're going to get, here's a common question that people ask. If I have a degree in X, will that guarantee that I get accepted into whatever school they're applying to? And I always say no, because each school has a different committee and they have a different set of criterion. And so, for example, if someone majors in philosophy and wants to be a clinical psychologist, it just depends on, whether or not, for example, they meet the criterion. So whether you have the GPA and the work experience and, if they're still doing standardized tests, those standardized test scores, And then the committee accepts, after the interview, that person into their program. But if you major in something like different, like let's just say chemistry or physics, and then you want to be a psychologist, well, that's a little different because you have no background in psychology. And those kind of things are what the committees are looking for. The other thing is, if you are already a psychologist, so let's say a social psychologist, so you say, oh, I want to be a clinical psychologist, but I'm a social psychologist. I've done a dissertation to get my PhD in social psychology, but I am wanting to do the clinical psych degree now in PhD. Well, guess what, guys? That person is going to have to take a program in clinical psych. So you can't just switch, right? They would actually have to go through a clinical psych program and write another dissertation. So you need to be sure about what you want to do when you get into this field. There's a ton of research out there. You make sure you read about it and you understand exactly what you want to do before you get into it. Another thing you want to do is you want to be well versed in licensing standards. I don't think that's talked about it enough in some schools. So if you are going to practice privately, you need a license. If you are going to administer psychological tests, you need a license. Okay? School psychologists have licenses or certifications, depending on the state, to administer IQ tests and things like that. However, they cannot administer tests not without a license as a psychologist by a state board, right? Personality tests. Doctorate level licensed psychologists give those tests. So I know how to do all of them, right? But I can't give those tests in the school because in my doctorate program, we had to learn how to give MMPIs and the Rorschach and all those tests. Those are not tests that I have a whole lot of experience in, personality tests, because I don't do those tests with children and we don't do those tests at the school level. They're too complicated um, tests to use in the schools. So there's a whole lot you can do. Now, what can you do with both degrees, a PsyD and a PhD? Both are clinical degrees. The PhD is also a research degree. The PhD is, so the PsyD is more clinically focused. They don't do a lot of research at all. They mostly do just clinical work and a dissertation. If you're going to get a PhD, you need to be prepared for research because you are going to research the whole time you're in school and not just for your PhD. So when you hit the ground, we started school in June 2001. June 2001. By August, we were doing research with our labs, 2001, and that lasted all the way to 2006 for 5 years of research. So get ready for that. That's something that the PsyDs don't need to do because they stay clinically focused. So if you just want to do that, consider the PsyD. But if you want to have more experience with research, you can certainly, opt to do the PhD. The Doctorate of Education, or the EDD, that's an option as well, especially for someone who wants to be a principal or, superintendent. A lot of the superintendents that I know have PhDs actually, but there are some who have EDDs. So it just depends. So when you think about psychology, think of it in terms of psychology being an umbrella term. And all the spokes in the umbrella are various majors, if you will, or specialties that you can go into. And so those are the things that you have to choose. There was something else I wanted to answer with psychology. Once you decide you want to be a clinical psychologist, for example, you have to prepare your mind for your licensing applications and things like that, which are going to start once you finish your postdoc. So your postdoc is what you do after you finish your doctorate program. And some schools will allow you to do it like mine did as you write your dissertation once you have every other criterion completed. So if you have any other questions about, getting those degrees or in reference to psychology, make sure you ask me, okay? And I'll try to answer them as they come. All right, going back to the blog. We are on blog 45. I call this blog Public Questions because I want to make sure I am answering your questions about my experiences in the blog. So, one question that actually somebody asked me today, funny, I was asked this today. So, I'm going to actually read this from the blog because, of course, I remember a lot of stuff, but I don't remember all the questions, right? Right. Why do some people see or sense ghosts and others don't? Someone said, I feel as though I am a very spiritual person, but I have never seen a ghost. Um, I People ask me that all the time. Like I said, I had that question asked of me today. Um, a lot of the way that I answer this question is twofold. One, kids and parents, so nebulous kids and nebulous parents have told me that seeing ghosts is not pleasant. It's just not pleasant. You might want this ability, or it may seem fun, like, ooh, they can see ghosts. I want to see a ghost. I want to see a ghost. But they always say it's not an ability that you really should want to have because it can be frightening. It's not easy to have the ability and function normally because you can see everything around people. Somebody was telling me that today, that they see everything around people that we can't. And sometimes they follow them and things like that. And so it's not always rosy and happy, and it's not always Casper the Friendly Ghost, put it like that. And so they don't exactly explain to me why they can see ghosts and why they cannot. One mother actually told me what she thinks happens, that children, she believes, and she can see ghosts. She said, I believe, because she said she had been seeing ghosts since she was a little kid, you know, that people see ghosts. Everybody does as little kids. But then for some of us, it goes away, that ability, and it's like the veil has been lifted on everyone else, and then they can see ghosts. So sometimes she said God chooses to lift the veil on some of us, and on some of us he doesn't. And so that's her interpretation of it. Otherwise, I actually don't know why some people can and some people can't. Those of you who feel that you are spiritual spiritual like this lady, I'm not sure if that has anything to do with some people having the ability and some people don't. Um, so it just depends if you have it or not, or if you do have the ability to see ghosts, maybe you can tell me why you think, some people can see ghosts and some people cannot. Now, I'll tell you this, just based on personal experience of mine, I am actually glad I can't see ghosts because I am told from so many kids that it's not a pleasant experience, that it's something that I never want to have happen to me here on this earth as long as I'm alive. So there you go. Somebody had asked me if I ever felt the existence of spirits. And I'm going to say yes. Personally, many times, absolutely, yes. Um, I actually today was able to feel the existence of something dark in somebody that I was talking to today. And this person did say, yes, I have a dark spirit around me. Now, did I see it? No, not with my eyes. And I don't know how to explain that. But I was able to describe exactly what it looked like just by like tuning into what this person was saying. It's weird, and I've done that before to kids. So I really don't know how to explain that. And that person asked me, and I said, I don't know how I know what that thing looks like, but I just do. It's just there. So I don't know. But have I ever felt the existence of other spirits? And yes, because I have some stories and conversations on my blog about um, having a feeling that something was around me. I talk about one time about when I was sitting on the steps. So you got to read this stuff in my blog. When I felt like I was pushed down a flight of steps. So yeah, go back to my blog and read some of that. So yeah, I have felt the existence of spirits. Another question is, are ghosts real or are they just demons? Now, you know what? Even if you go to different websites like Quora and stuff like that, people actually ask that question quite a bit. Are ghosts real or are they just demons? And I'm going to explain it to you the way that nebulous individuals have explained it to me. They say that ghosts are demons, but God's angels are obviously God's angels, and not all ghosts glow white. The ones that are not of God are demons. So that's what they tell me. Um, there is no purgatory period between life and death. This is coming from Nebulous Kids. Now, some of you who are religious have taught, know, and understand this stuff from a biblical standpoint. However, I am telling you all what Kids have said to me, that there is no purgatory period. You either go to God or you don't. You go dark, which they call dark angel. They call demons dark angels. And so they say most of the time what we see, what the kids see, they can tell if the spirit is actually an angel of God. And if it's not, it's a demon. And so these are the kids telling me that. And so they believe that all of this stuff is real. Yes, absolutely. Number 4 says, is there any irrefutable proof that anything supernatural has ever happened anywhere, anytime? That's a really good question. And of course, it comes from someone who does not believe in science. Okay. And I say does not believe in science because, do I want to say does not believe in science? Let me think about that. They do believe in science. So erase that. And I'll tell you why I say they do. Because scientists like proof. And I am a scientist and like proof. The only reason that I don't need proof that ghosts exist is because I believe in kids and I believe what kids tell me, because the proof that I have is that not only did one child tell me, but several children have been telling me over the years about their ability to see ghosts, right? So I actually believe these kids because sometimes these kids lived in different states, countries, didn't know each other. The parents don't know one another. I have witnesses to a lot of this stuff. Other adults have proved this stuff to be true, that some of the kids have said to me at various jobs. So I have a lot of proof that these kids did not lie to me, and it's still happening to me as of today in working with these kids. So is there any proof? Like, could I run any statistics and say, hey, this either accepted or rejected the null? For those of you who, do research, no, I absolutely cannot. But I will tell you, when these kids started to feel better under my care because of some of the things that we were doing, and even some of my colleagues were doing with me to deal with the fact that they were, being tormented by ghosts, that's all the proof that I needed. Number 5, what could these orbs, lights, or weird things appearing in my childhood photos be? Could they be? That's a good question. Now, I don't really talk about orbs. You guys know this if you listen to the blog and follow the podcast. I don't really know about orbs or, different things and pictures because the kids never really did talk to me about that stuff. So a lot of what I did and researched and found out, if you will, from these kids, you know, it did not come from talking about orbs and stuff like that. They just didn't do that. There was no, for example, How can I explain this? Okay. If you watch Casper the Friendly Ghost, if a ghost just wanted to appear, or if Casper just wanted to appear and play with the kids, it just did, right? There was nothing flashing before Casper actually showed himself to the kids. And that's kind of how it is. So they didn't have any signs, if you will, like an orb is a sign, as far as what I've read, that a ghost is going to appear. They just appeared to the kids like they were people. Okay. So there you go. Number 6. Why does this ghost keep haunting me? For the last 2 months, every time I sleep, a ghost comes to try to kill me before I force myself to wake up. Like sleep paralysis, but I feel an evil spirit drifting in the window. Okay. Let's see. I actually need at the time that I wrote this blog, let's see, what date was this? This was in January of this year. Okay. And so probably in March, maybe, I actually wrote a blog about sleep paralysis. So at the time that I wrote this blog here, blog 45, I wrote that it's one of my favorite topics and one of my favorite questions, because it is talking about sleeps and dreams in correlation to the paranormal. And so I always go back to movies. Always. And when I answered this question for this person, I actually went back to movies because we've seen in movies about deep, dark shadows hovering over people when they sleep, right? I don't think writers make this stuff up for movies. I think that they've experienced these things because they talk about them or show them in movies exactly how nebulous children have reported them to me. Um, and so I encountered, a lot of nebulous children who also had trouble sleeping for some of the same reasons. And so waking up at night, something was on their chest, suffocating them, not allowing them to wake themselves up. I mean, I have a lot of stories about that. So telling a kid not to be afraid and confront the spirit was out of the question. Why? Because they're very scared when they're sleeping. And remember, these are kids. These are kids. So what I had to do was to give them different tools to use so that they can be safe and feel safe in their rooms at night. And so one of the things that worked for these kids was giving them a Bible and talking to them about it. And even if it was an atheist parent, we would talk about it. And I kid you not, they would approve, this weapon, if you will, in their room to help their kids. Because remember, most parents just want what's best with their kids despite their religious beliefs. And so I know you guys don't want to hear that part, but that's actually what happened with these kids. And so it was a way of spiritually protecting these kids and in their homes. And so inside of their homes. Now, as I've gotten older, I've also learned to ask parents to bless the outside of their homes. It's exactly what my husband and I have done as well to our house. And that's because I knew nebulous kids who would actually tell me that their homes felt safe, but then they would look out the window and they would see these ghosts or demons outside of the windows. And I actually know somebody close to me who told me the same thing. And so, hey, and there was a time when I would work with some of these kids and they would be looking out the window when I was working with them clinically on a job, and they would tell me they're watching us outside of the window, and I would look at the window like, who? And they would say all of the spirits that follow me are outside of the window, or I'm playing with this particular spirit outside of the window, and blah 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 blah. And I would go, oh, okay, well, I need to start praying outside of the building so they can actually go away and leave you alone when you are learning from me. So they would always talk about how dark angels would watch. I mean, God's angels would watch too, but they would actually be in the room with us. But dark angels would watch how I interacted with the kids, and they would always watch how I interacted with the kids, from other buildings and things like that. Now, this is all according to the parents who can see ghosts and according to the kids who can see ghosts. So it seems like when somebody asks, why are the ghosts haunting me, you just haven't gotten rid of them and they just keep following you. And that's what I learned. And you don't have to, when it comes to sleep, you can do the same thing when you sleep. So you can ask for protection before you go to sleep. You can do that. They will stop. They will stop. Okay. And drifting in the window. Yeah, I understand that. A lot of kids tell me that they're in the windows and stuff like that. I'm actually glad my office doesn't have a window in it right now. It's just all brick. Now that I think about it, because those windows were always something else, because the kids would always see, demons in the window and stuff like that. All right, let's see. Can there be, this question said, okay. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the question. Hold on one second. Can there be an evil spirit that wants to specifically hurt you? That's a good question. And I'm going to say yes. Yes, 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 yes. I got quiet, not just because I was trying to read the question, but when I thought about the question, it made me think about some interactions I had today. And someone was telling me, yes, it used to tell me to do things when I was a little kid, to hurt other people. It used to tell me this, it used to tell me that, and all of the things were to harm other people, right? And um, that bothered me because I actually knew what this person was talking about when they said, yeah, it tried to make me hurt my mother, it tried to make me hurt my siblings, it tried to make me do this, it tried to make me do that. I knew exactly what they were talking about. And I always tell you guys over and over again, demons are not our friends. They are out to destroy humans. They don't like us. And so with you guys befriending them, you're actually allowing them to come into your life, and you don't want to do that. So when you think about them specifically hurting you, yeah, I mean, look at the state of some things that are going on in the world right now. Of course, they're out to hurt us. That's absolutely true. And so they hate humans. They want to harm us. That's their goal. So don't call upon them. They don't leave easily once you figure out that they start causing more harm than good to you. They don't leave easily. Will they leave? Yes. What you have to do is you do have to, based upon my experiences with nebulous children and parents, you do have to demand them away, and you do have to do it in God's name. That is just the way that it is, and that's what worked for these kids. Okay, so thank you so much for submitting those questions to me. There are more questions. I am going to be writing them up over the next couple of weeks and answering them for you. Next week is blog 46. Here we go again. That's because around this time, January 2022, out of the blue, and I have told you guys that I have not worked with nebulous kids in quite a few years, except there was one last year. And I did not work with her for a long time, but once, which prompted me to start this podcast and this blog, the experience I had last year. However, this year, for some reason, I am meeting a lot of kids who can see ghosts again. And I also met a parent. Yay! So I will be talking about all those things over the next few weeks, but I am going to introduce you to, starting with this next blog, these are actually some of the newer kids, nebulous kids. So get ready, because we're going to start talking about kids I think like G through I over the next few months. So if you have any questions, make sure you let me know. Thank you for joining me so late. I really appreciate it. I will see you all next week. Next week, I will officially have a college graduate. I just cannot believe it. I'm so excited. All right, you guys have a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you next week.